time period of Bruce Lee's art. He gave different parts of his journey.
Right.
You know? And if you're in with them, they're human beings. So if they trust you, they trust you. It's not like some triad society. But the thing about Bruce Lee's art, like any art taken to extremes, it's street fighting art. You're breaking legs, you're eye jabbing, you're hit. You know, it's not things. There's nothing flowery in it. So some people go into the art to look good. Some people want to be functional and look good. You know? So I went into the martial arts films as well afterwards. I had to have all the flashy stuff to go with it, but the quality you can go is very functional. And I got to really respect these people because they were lovely human beings, and each of those had a need inside of them that Bruce saw. He wouldn't take just anyone, so they didn't just, you know. So the journey was a spiritual, emotional, and physical journey with them. So it was quite difficult to begin with, but once you get a recommendation, then you're in. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I suppose another sort of comparison I'm thinking of here is I do a lot of coaching, like football coaching, sports coaching for kids over here, and I had this debate the other day with another coach, a rugby coach, in fact, and we were talking about how things can. I mean, with our culture, especially in the UK, with kids, a lot of it, especially in team sports, is about taking part, pass the ball rather than show off. And I was saying to him, we had this group coming from Brazil, and they were kind of experimenting with the way they coach their kids, which is very much completely different way round. It's very much expressing yourself, you know, encourage them to show off, to make sure they know what winning is. The mentality starts young, which is why often, especially with kids, they get to a certain age and we get to that part where we've got to start competing and they're just not used to it almost. It's just not been embedded. From your point of view in the martial arts stuff, especially from China, like, is there often a case like where you've got so many of these clubs and facilities set up that they kind of, it's got their own sort of spin on it, where they've had to take in something culturally from the UK, or they've had to do it just by legislation and stuff like that? Is that been like a massive thing, or do you think that they've tried to keep it as strict to the original discipline as possible? Because I know things like I remember a club. What did they do? They were doing, what does it's the one I'm not massive on, because it's what is Steven Segal. What's his main?
Aikido.
Aikido, yes, it was an Aikido club, but they said, like, look, what we do and what they do out there, there was something to do, because I know there's no kicking involved in most of that, but they said, like, that's changed, and now there's this side of it, and it's just evolved and evolved and evolved.
Well,
how much of that in your time, like, you must have seen loads of that and walked into some places and thought, that ain't right. Does that happen a lot, and if so, does that bother you?
Well, like yourself, once you've seen stuff, you get, you know what's real and what's not.
Sure.
You know? In the early days, there was a lot of chop socky kung fu masters who couldn't really peel an orange, but they made out they could. Bruce Lee's whole thing was about honesty in the martial arts, knowing yourself and expressing yourself honestly.
Yeah.
And I walked into lots of places, and it makes you sound big-headed, but I'm not. But you can see when it's real and when it's not.
Sure.
You know? And I think UFC, when it came along, opened everyone's eyes to what's practical and what's not.
Right.
UFC is a Jeet Kune Do concept. You need everything to make it work. The grappling arts, like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, these different things, and as well as the striking arts. But in the olden days, they treated it like separate foods.
Yeah.
And our food is better than your food.
Sure.
But she said you need to have a balanced diet. You mix all the food. You mix it all together, like colours on a paint palette. What's the best on a paint palette there? You know? And he was the first one to do that. So I think it's now less tolerated. The traditional art, you've got to have tradition. You've got to have it, you know, because it needs to survive. But the practical side of it is what Bruce Lee first, and then UFC up. So people are leaning now more towards not the cultural side of it, but the practical side of it. I always make sure I teach the philosophy to go with the martial arts, to go with the violence. Artists and warriors have to be the yin and yang, you know. I'm a big kid.
Absolutely, yeah.
Extra things, and I love Star Trek, and, you know, I'm not interested in fast cars and things, but the child side of me balances the dark side of me, which is
sure,
be prevalent as well.
Sure. Now, when you're a younger person and you're just learning this stuff, does it, like for me, I definitely would have some sort of an ego going with it, I'm sure. But did there ever come times where you was like, you were at such a point of surety of yourself, like you knew you could handle yourself, that opportunities could arise, or you felt like, I could do this, I could impress these people or these girls over here? Like, did those times happen early on, and like, or was you pretty level-headed and pretty chilled?
Well, to be honest, because I started from zero confidence and the terrible life my family had.
Sure.
When I started to get some confidence, I had to overcompensate. Because inside me, I never could believe that I could do this stuff.
Right.
So to master what I really felt, the doubts inside me, I overcompensated and I became arrogant. I became a bit conceited. I accepted every challenge there was. Some really I'd instigate in a way. Walked away.
Sure.
Not down dirty street fights and stuff that I had later on, but I did start to become arrogant, and women like confidence, and I started to realise that.
Yeah.
I didn't have a girlfriend until I was 20. How ridiculous is that? The sheltered life I had. But once I realised, I've got something here, it sort of ran away with me for a little while. I look back and I don't know who I used to be, but you have to go through that side of it to come back, and then you get the balance. Strike the balance between arrogance and confidence. Hopefully I'm confident there without the arrogance, but I was arrogant for quite a while.
Sure. No, I would get that. Now, when you teach your students, like, and obviously you come across it, have you come across instances where they've kind of come back to you and said, look, I've got issues going on with somebody, whether they're being bullied or there's an issue, and they've said, like, I need to deal with this, I need to handle this. What sort of advice do you give to that? Because it must be quite difficult to know what best to suggest. Like, obviously they have these tools, they've been taught these tools to use, obviously when needed, but at the same time as somebody teaching them, there's got to be that kind of, I guess, balancing act with when's the right time. Has that happened, and have there been good and bad experiences of that for you that you've seen in your time?
Yeah, because I nurture them as well. It sounds like a soft word, but I don't have massive classes. Right. Class, it used to be bigger when I had a bigger premises. But I make sure when you get inside the person, you know who they are. Sometimes if they need bringing down, you bring them down. If they need it's without lying to them, you bring them up. Right. So when they leave me, hopefully they're a balanced individual. There's been a couple of instructors, without naming names, I've created over the years, stayed with me maybe 10 years, 12 years. Yeah. And they've gone away and became someone I didn't really recognize. Right. It's only happened a couple of times. But I think what I tell them is, Bruce used to say to see is to be deceived, to hear is to lie to, but to feel is to know the truth. If you've got a good moral compass, which I vet people, if they're not who I think, I don't let them in. They are judge, juror, and executioner. So their moral compass will tell them the right time to do what. If they've got doubts, then they've got to answer them themselves. I wouldn't give them tools unless I try them. But the thing is, in like any martial art taken to a degree, the tools you've got, Bruce Lee, when he first began, the Green Hornet, Kato. He came over, and all his martial arts were destroy you, take your eyes out, break your knees. Right? He met a guy called Gene Labell. He was, I know that. Judo Gene Labell. And he was an amazing stuntman. And he could take all Bruce Lee's hits and stuff because his reactions were great. But when he first met Bruce Lee, I heard this from the guys, they come and train with the place I trained. Gene Labell was like an icon. Right. And he went to shake Bruce Lee's hand. Instead of doing that, he grabbed Bruce Lee in the thigh and grabbed his shoulder, lifted him above his head. You might have heard this. Held him above his head. Wow. Bruce Lee screamed at him, "Put me down, you son of a bitch, I'll kill you." Gene said, "That's why I'm not going to put you down, Bruce." And he said he was just trying to show Bruce that there's an in-between. In those days, Bruce either killed you or he didn't. That's why he went for a load of stuntmen when he did Green Hornet. It made Bruce realise and think that all his arsenal was far too deadly, and there's got injury to degree. So when Bruce Lee's martial art, we have the injury to degree. When someone looks at you wrong, you don't jab their eyes out.
Yeah.
Sometimes a wrist lock, sometimes a stamp on their foot.
Mm-hmm.
That won't follow you. Knee in the leg. So whatever they're doing to you, your moral compass won't let you go over a certain degree.
Sure.
If they pull out a knife, I'm not saying advocating it, but if they pull out a knife, you do what you need to survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, my people, I make sure they've got this injury to degree down pat. And
Sure.
with the martial arts or any situations, you can't have time to say, I will do this, I will do that. You don't say, what shall I do? You go, what did I just do? And if it's so ingrained in you, you won't do the wrong thing morally or physically. It's not on automatic. So it's the way Bruce Lee was training everyone as well. I was trained. It's got to be part of you. So you don't think he's pissed me off, I'll smash his face in.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think as well what you were saying about when UFC come along, especially those early days. For anybody that doesn't remember, UFC wasn't quite like it is now. It was the Ultimate Fighting, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, and it used to be kind of like a playoff all in one day. God knows how they got through it of all the injuries through the night, but
no weight division.
No weight division.
Anything goes apart from my jabs. Yeah.
It was like a computer game. It was like some kid had sat home in their bedroom and thought, I want to see this guy against this guy, and this huge, massive sumo wrestler against a black belt in karate or whatever, and a wrestler and Roman Greco, whatever. Like it was just all over the place. But it certainly was very fascinating, and I encourage anybody to go back and watch those earlier ones, because quite fascinating when you had kickboxers going in there, and there was always this. Before that point, I would imagine, because this is pre-YouTube, this is pre all the social media, people watching street fights now and all the rest of it. The only way you would kind of ever imagine this up was literally in your head, I would guess, for the most part, when you get these disciplines against each other. Like, what if this guy went against this? Do you think that it had, because I know again in Japan that sort of thing had been happening as well, like UFC kind of stuff with MMA was just peaking a little bit. But do you think once that started to happen, there was a sort of dilemma with a lot of these sort of disciplines in almost thinking like we need to protect ourselves a little bit here? Yeah.
Well, the Gracies dominated everything. Gracies.
Sure. Yeah.
Don't matter if you were a good puncher, good kicker, they'd get in there. And if you'd never grappled, you were finished.
Yeah.
Later on, the strikers learned to grapple, and the grapplers had to strike, which was what Bruce Lee was saying all the time. It's what the range you do it in. So I think a lot of people had a rude awakening. My instructor, Richard Bustillo, was my main instructor. He's passed away now, bless him. He gave me loads of the old UFC tapes, and he maybe watched them before they were, like you say, popular. There's no weight division. There's no rules. That's what Bruce Lee was doing all those years ago. So that's why Bruce Lee was so devastating in those days. Richard told me a story about Bruce. Bruce used to challenges that people never heard about. He never fought. He did Long Beach and tournaments just for exhibitions, but he fought all the time. He was challenged by this brilliant Taekwondo kicker, and had done Mongolian martial arts and everything else, and he accepted his challenge. They went to the new territories of China, Hong Kong, and they had 3 representatives with them. Right, they signed these things, and this guy was supposed to be the most amazing kicker in the world. So Bruce Lee went up and started kicking leaves off trees, kicking the leaves off these trees.
Right.
The guy went up beside him and started kicking leaves off trees as well. So it became like a pissing contest. So he saw how Bruce was kicking and things. And my instructor said, Richard was there, my instructor was there. They stood there and bowed, and then they was going to start. Obviously, Bruce faked a high hand, put his hand at these guys. They heard boom. And the guy was on the floor rolling out. Bruce had broken 5 of his toes with a foot stomp.
Wow.
Broke his toes instantly.
Yeah.
And he planted the seed in the guy's mind. It's going to be a kicking pissing contest. That's how functional Bruce Lee was. Yeah. And in Bruce Lee's school, you've got always there left behind. He had a foot stomp mechanism. Live on that. And he had a clock with like the PSI poundage on it,
right,
hydraulics on it.